The reasons I'm up here talking is because I think one of the things that happens is that we have some great practices. We do things in a really good way, but we're not very good often at communicating them to the wider business. I work for a slightly, not quite a corporate, not quite a startup, somewhere in the middle. And communicating to our stakeholders is often quite challenging. We use the agile language, we use the term sprints, we use all sorts of things like that. And what we tend to find happen is they tend to glaze over and fall asleep or start talking about something else. And if you go into code quality or anything like that, they sort of say, what difference does it make to me? So I try and use analogies and compare things to other things. And this is really what I'm hoping to share with you today. I'm the Scrum Master team lead at a company called Total Jobs in the United Kingdom. We do, I think, quite a nice thing, which is to marry up employers with job seekers. We do enterprise level agile with 7 Scrum teams, one of which is based in Poland. And I've been working with Scrum for 5 years. Now, despite the rest of this presentation, I am not affiliated to Garmin, TomTom, or any other Sat Nav people. So what am I trying to do? Well, demonstrate that the same principles used in planning a car journey can also be used to describe and be applied to release planning. Provide a real-life analogy which you can use to talk to your business that they will understand and hopefully get along with. And I hope demonstrate a bit of the value of a release plan. I accept all the uncertainties, and we'll talk about those a little bit later on. But I still think it's valuable to have some kind of indication of how things are going. Now, just in terms of analogy, I so often get people saying, well, it's just software that is unpredictable. It doesn't happen in the way that we expect. That is absolutely not true. Software development is not unique in this respect. Basically, anything that is done by a government takes far longer than you ever think is possible and tends to cost more. We've got a very good example of that in the States at the moment. Anything involving painting and decorating. You go in, you think you're going to paint a room, you end up rewiring it, replumbing it, and it goes on. It takes longer. If you've got children, you'll know this is absolutely true. Children, you can't plan with any certainty that you're going to get out of the house at any certain time. Things get lost. But also a car journey, and even with sophisticated Sat Nav equipment, which is a way of planning. It's no different from anything else. So let's examine some of the similarities between planning a normal family car journey and a typical project. Both have product owners, and we'll come to them in a little bit in a second. We plan for a journey beforehand. Even if we're going around the corner, we do think about what route we're going to take before we get there. When using a Sat Nav, we accept a margin of error, and this is, I think, one of the key points. Sat Navs will tell you that you will arrive in 3 hours and 51 minutes, or 52 minutes, and it's very, very precise. But you'd be a fool to accept that, and I don't think you normally do. What you do is you say, well, we're going to have a couple of breaks, we've got kids in the car, we're going to need this, and you'll add on a margin of error. So let me introduce you to product owners. These are my 2 children, and they are as awkward and very similar to any other product owner. Typical of all product owners, they are impatient. They cannot get there quick enough. They have absolutely minimal concern about quality. They're not really interested in that. Well, unless it affects them getting to that end journey, they don't really worry too much about it. And they like treats along the way. My kids like sugary ones, so that tends to mean a stop, and it means delivering something. So in part of my analogy, it's about delivering some software. And they like to know the answer to, are we there yet? And continually ask the question, as was shown in the video of The Simpsons yesterday. So, getting started. When we go on a journey, we plan. With Sat Nav, we put in destination coordinates, With Scrum projects, we start with a set of objectives. If the wrong objectives are input, then we will simply not get to where we're going to. There is no difference with a software project. There are plenty of examples of people ending up on the edge of a cliff, and in a software, which is not where they're expecting to be. A software project is no different. If you're going to the wrong place, you're never going to get there. So how does a Sat Nav plan? Well, it actually knows a number of things at the start, which is very similar to when you're planning any form of work. So it knows where you're starting from. You know pretty much where you are now. It knows where you've told it to go. Those are your objectives. It knows the sort of velocity you might have. So on a car journey, it knows the sort of speed limit of roads, and it knows how long the journey is going to be. It knows how many miles it is. And from that, various complicated algorithms, it gives you, it works out a route. It gives you sometimes some suggested routes. It will give you an estimated arrival time. And it will give you the overall distance to be covered. The other thing about Sat Nav is it is actually brutally honest. It doesn't say, well, actually you're going to arrive there in 2.5 hours, when actually it means you're going to arrive there in about 4.5 hours. A release plan will give you the same sort of information. It gives you an estimation of the number of sprints that you are likely to need. It will give you some apparent release date of your final drop, and it will give you the steps you are likely to take to meet your objectives. But it should also be brutally honest. Within some of the teams that I work with, they are very often trying to please the product owner. That's sort of, you're sort of almost dooming yourself to fail before you even set out. So if you think it's going to take 6 months, it's going to take 6 months or more. Typically with a Sat Nav, we apply caveats or rules of thumb. We automatically add time in our heads and what we tell the people we're going to meet at the other end or the kids in the back. We add on time for fuel stops, comfort breaks, detours. We accept absolutely that traffic might hold us up. We know it's going to. We also know that our speed might fluctuate. You can't ever hit that perfect velocity and perfect speed limit on roads, so don't expect to do the same thing on a project. And we might even be aware of traffic hotspots and allow for them as we go. In short, it's an estimation. It is not a prediction of the future. I think one of the things when you're talking to your product owners or your stakeholders is they often see it and they say, right, it's going to drop on this specific date, and that's it, I don't need to do anything more. Well, that's not true. And it's not the same in a car either. You know that's an estimate. You know that things might happen. So in your release plan, do include your dates of code drops. Think about your risks up front. If you know you've got some possible problems up ahead, think about them and build those in. And you know you're going to have these sort of traffic hotspots. So legacy code, I think most companies will, of any sort of been around for any length of time, will have some of that. You know you're going to have to get in there. And sort of going back to the code quality, build that into your plan. Don't expect that to that you can just sort of magic time out of nowhere, because you can't. This is another one. There are times when you know there is going to be obvious velocity drops. People take holidays. You can almost guarantee that during the summer, between August and September, people take time off. Christmas, hey, that happens at the same time every year, so you know that people are going to be away, right? But also be aware of over-planning. We are agile. It's not about sort of planning to detail all the way along the way, but experience and your own views of things will give you some kind of idea. So it's not about sort of getting teams in and sort of saying, right, we're going to plan for the next 2 or 3 days. It's about quickly going through, estimating, and quickly just coming up with some kind of guide of where you're going. Make it visible. Place it on the Teams board and refer to it. There is no point doing a planning exercise at the beginning and then forgetting about it. You don't in a car. And share it with the product owner and other stakeholders. And be prepared to invite discussion around it. The plan is there, not as a fixed point, but something that should be adapted and changed and referred to as you go. Now, what happens if we don't plan? Well, it's pretty obvious. We get lost. Teams lose a sense of direction. They lose where they're trying to go. And sight of their objectives, what they're trying to achieve. You also find that your motivation and productivity levels just simply drop because people really feel as though they're sort of on some kind of treadmill. Teams do not even know when they need to stop. This is a strange one. I think it's often referred to as guilt edging or gold plating. And it's where teams are over and over delivering it. Another feature goes in, another feature, another. Do you need them all? Often not. Look at your objectives and refer to them. Have we achieved it? Right, now's the time to stop. So the journey. When you're on your software journey, when you're on your project, when you're on your car journey, your Sat Nav is constantly updating you, and it's giving you information. If we go the wrong way, it recalculates. On a project, you should emulate some of these ideas. Think about how it does these things. You refer to your map, your Sat Nav, and constantly referring to it. So do that with your release plan, and keep updating it. If it goes stale, it starts becoming worthless, and you end up going in the wrong place anyway. And on a journey, we also need to keep our product owners informed. With kids in the back, trust me, you do need to keep them informed. So don't just update the plan, communicate it and act on it. So what if things don't go to plan? This quite often happens. Things, everything is unpredictable. So anticipate your delays. On a car journey, you listen to the radio. On a project, listen to the team. Listen to what they're trying to tell you. Listen to the people around you. I think this was said yesterday. Try and avoid delays. Be prepared to plan around them. You start looking a few sprints ahead. You think, actually, this is going to take a bit longer. We need to do something with it. But also, I think the other thing, which I find sometimes our teams are less keen to do, is actually ask for help. What other things can you do? Who else can you engage? There are people often around the business. There's people on the web. There are people at conferences like this. And are there any other routes you can take? Sometimes delay is absolutely unavoidable. You find yourself in a massive traffic jam. The temptation often is to put your plan in a drawer and go, don't want to look at that because it's just telling me things I don't want to know. Well, they tend to be the things you should know, and they are the things that you need to be engaging people with. But you need to keep your product owners informed. Now, if you've got two kids in the back, they tend to be really rather irritated. Your average product owner is no different. They will probably not be happy. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't be talking to them and engaging them. So discuss your options. Can you turn off? Can you follow another route? Is it simply worth sticking with it and continuing? And what other help can you engage? But I think the other thing is be honest. Tell them what's happening. Now, when you get out of these jams, there is the temptation to speed up. Now, in a car journey, it can result in a meeting with your local constabulary, or worse. On a project, it's not much difference. And I've got this picture up, actually, on the UK motorways. It sort of says tiredness can kill. Now, I wouldn't say that on our average software project that is the case. However, it will lead to a loss of quality. And when we are dealing with people who are professionals like yourselves, don't be tempted to sort of push the quality. We'll do it after the project, because actually you'll never get round to it. I've seen this a couple of times where a team just burns out. You try and work them harder. You try and make them work extra hours. Oh, what are you doing this weekend? Nothing. Oh, that's good. These things don't tend to work. The other thing is, even when you speed up on a road, and I've tried this actually, I wouldn't recommend this. You speed up, you actually find that if you go above the speed limit, you're sort of doing 80, 90. It doesn't actually make as big a difference to the journey time as you think. And the risks are very, very great. But whatever you do, don't just blindly follow a plan. I like planning. I think it's a great thing to do, but always apply common sense. Look out your windows. What's happening around you? You know, are our objectives the right? Are we going to the right place after all? And if not, sit down, change, replan. This is obvious. If it looks wrong, the chances are it is. And car journeys, there are loads of documented issues in the press where people drive through 6 countries when they're only meant to go be driving around the corner. Don't just follow your Sat Nav. Use your common sense with it. So, to sum up, know beforehand where you want to go. Check and recheck your objectives. Keep on re-evaluating those as you go. Release planning is not about predicting the future. It's about providing estimates. It's an area of thought. And apply common sense. Don't blindly follow your plan. And finally, release planning is only valid if you refer to it and evaluate it. So, plan like a Sat Nav. Thank you very much.